Welcome back. Sorry for the inconvenience. Speed at the bottom of the helix. It's hard to introduce someone who invented this whole NMRAx idea, but our next clinician moved to his new home in early 2020 to start construction of his large N-scale layout set in southeastern Wisconsin. However, either Wisconsin was not big enough or his layout room got a little cramped. He decided to jump into Free-moN to expand horizons a little bit. She will shortly see how he decided to do it in also a slightly different way. From an island in the northern Scotland, please welcome MMR and NMRA President Gordy Robinson.
Thank you, Speed. Right, let's get this going, shall we? All right, cool. Cool. Okay, so yes, three more N modules. And I'm just going to move my laptop in front of me. I apologize. So yeah, three more printed, three more N modules. But let's just start with the basics. So what is Free-moN? So Free-moN is a modular standard that people will be familiar with. Free-moN is the N scale variety of it. There's an image there on the screen of the setup at the National Train Show in Salt Lake City, Utah in 2019. You've may or may not be familiar, so we'll just talk through for a few slides on what actually is Free-moN. This is the official line, but I just want to call out a few particular points in this. So Free-moN is all about maximizing flexibility from your module design. The only thing that's specified is the end plate in terms of the design of a physical module and the mainline track standards. The track needs to be interoperable. Here in the NMRA, we know all about that. And this is just around the track being code 55 rail for the main line, minimum of 22-inch radius, and number 6 turnouts. But otherwise, it's the world is your oyster. You can do anything you want between the module design. The other thing that's key is that the end plate specification allows integration into home layouts, which means, as Speed said, Gordy can expand his layout in multiple different ways, and we can maximize the use of the space if we haven't got a lot of space, as we have in the UK, and we can take our modules and set them up in Free-moN setups elsewhere, potentially in the US. There are a few problems with that though, and we'll talk about them as we go through this presentation. Whoops, go back a sec. Come on. Okay. And then the final thing that's really important throughout all of this is that the scenery at the end plates needs to merge visually with the next module. As you can see in the picture on the right hand side, there's modules there in different states of construction, but at the module faces, there isn't track going off the end of the module into the next module where there may be grass or desert scenery or anything like that. So just being conscious of the fact that there's supposed to be flow from one module to the next. But we're not really too concerned about that for this presentation. We're concerned about the frame and the module benchwork itself. So a standard Free-moN module has an end plate that's 6 inches high and a minimum of 12 inches wide. The end plate should be made from 18mm birch plywood or an equivalent material, and this is where this comes into with 3D printing. The module end plates are secured with C-clamps, which is very important because you're going to apply a lot of pressure to them. So if you use any material other than plywood, it's got to be able to withstand it. And each module must have a fascia that contours to the scenery. The fascia must be black, and the modules are viewed from both sides. Now, at this point, if you want to capture this and look at all of the standards you can, they're available at Free-moN or freemon.net. The website is there on the slide, and we'll cover it again later in the presentation. So a standard module that people will be familiar with looks something like this. You've got a plywood frame around the outside, you've got plywood ends, you've got potentially plywood where the track is, and the rest of the module is made of some lightweight material such as foam. Very lightweight as traditional module standards go, especially if you've made chipboard modules or you've made modules out of dimensional lumber. They are much lighter. However, if you live on an island in the North Atlantic and you want to go to Dallas and have your module as part of a Free-moN setup. Or if you live on the East Coast and you want to attend with your modules on the West Coast and you don't fancy driving, or in my case, you don't want to get your feet wet or reenact the Titanic, you are going to need to make these even lighter. And that's where the 3D printing side of this comes in. So why not just use plywood? It's lightweight. It's very light. Well, a couple of reasons. Two end plates, so two 18 mm by 12-inch by 6-inch end plates weigh and birch ply about 850 grams, which is about 30 ounces. And you're thinking that's not a lot of weight, Gordy, you are a lunatic. Well, it is when you've got a weight limit and these things have to go on a plane. And whilst you could probably fit 23 kilos worth of module into a bag made out of plywood, you're probably not going to be very, you're not going to be very, I can't think of the word now, it's gone out of my head, but you're not going to be appreciated by the ground crew. And your bag's probably going to get launched. So you're trying to minimize the weight. You've got to think about other things that you need to take to a Free-moN meet, such as stock, control equipment, potentially throttles. You may want some clothes. Highly recommend deodorant and washing materials. So you've got to be careful of every gram or every ounce that you're putting into your carry onto your checked bag when you're flying. A 2-foot module made from plywood, just the frame and the foam top can weigh is a minimum weight of about 4 kilos or 10 pounds. With a 3D printed module, that frame and foam top can be up to 75% less weight than a plywood module. So there is a significant weight saving. Um, but there are some challenges. Okay. No plan survives first contact with the enemy, and if you start 3D printing these modules, you will realize very quickly that this is not as easy as you might think. So if you were to take a 3D module or anything that you 3D print, people will that 3D print a lot, and I'm not going to give a clinic on how to 3D print. There are other NMRAx clinics available for that. But when you 3D print something, you can hollow out the shape and you can apply what they call infill, which is where a percentage of the inside of your shape is filled with material. Obviously, the strongest 3D print you can do is with 100% infill. However, that's going to weigh more than plywood, or about the same, but most likely that will weigh more than plywood. Whilst it will be almost as strong as plywood if it's 18 mm thick, it's going to be a lot of weight, and the whole point is negated. The build plate, which is what's the maximum build area you have on a 3D printer, generally for the most entry level 3D printers is about 8 inches by 8 inches. Some are smaller, but generally an Ender 3, which is an entry level 3D printer or equivalent from any of the other manufacturers, is about an 8-inch by 8-inch plate. So 235 mm by 235 mm. You have a height, you can go up on the z-axis from the build plates, but generally you can only go up about 250 to 300 mil. So if you're doing a 12-inch module or 12-inch side, that is 304.8 millimeters, and it ain't going to work because you cannot build beyond your build plate unless you buy a very expensive 3D printer. So you have to build this in a way where it's componentized. So there's different components that come together to create a module, which is just the same as you would with plywood, even although the components would be probably a little bit larger as plywood comes in a large 8x4 sheet. Filament as well is more expensive than a sheet of plywood, although plywood's doing its best, the cost of materials is doing its best to overtake the cost of filament. But a kilo of filament, which is all you're probably going to need to make the frame of a module, is about £18. So about $25, maybe even less, $20 if you buy it in bulk of PLA filament, which is all we're using for this. Um, but that is more expensive than the cost of a bit of plywood. But bearing in mind, you're probably going to have to buy a whole sheet of plywood. The filament might be cheaper if you're just doing some small modules. You're also going to need to use some basic CAD software if you're going to go beyond a basic frame. And uh, my designs are available on Thingiverse, so you don't need to actually draw your own. You can use mine, but you are going to have to learn some kind of computer aided design software if you want to go beyond the basic frame. And I'll show you how you can get into some free software in a little while. The printed material also sometimes needs some special adhesives. You can use super glue, but the best thing you can use is some proper 3D glue adhesive like 3D glue, which is not cheap. It'll last you a little while, but it's not cheap to get it. It's about $40 a bottle and currently unavailable in the UK. So beyond the challenges, beyond this basic specification, there needs to be, of course, a proof of concept. So what I wanted to initially build was a 12-inch wide by 18-inch long module, and I wanted to try to do everything that I could. And that meant contouring the scenery base, that meant making the frame, making it in components that were limited by the size of my build plate. I also wanted to 3D print some of the scenery elements to try to basically 3D print everything other than the track and the scenery materials such as static grass and ballast. But I wanted to create a modular design so that I could expand this or contract it. And it's a good job that I did because I soon realized that I couldn't find a box that was going to fit a 12 by 18-inch module. I subsequently have, but between me doing my little proof of concept test model that you see in the bottom left of the screen there and actually printing this one-to-one size, I couldn't find a box in that time. So I shrunk this down to a 12 by 12 module. Um, and I would recommend a 30% test module for many reasons, but the 30% test module, which is what you see there on the bottom left, allowed me to figure out some things that worked and didn't work in the design. But that was a proof of concept. So let's look at what did the frame look like on this. So here is a picture of the frame. What you see in there is the is a frame that is 4 inches tall, although it's on its side here, and you're looking down from the top. You're looking from the top through the bottom. So the bottom's on the far side, the top's on the side nearest to you as you look at this picture. It's 12 inches wide on each side, and it's 4 inches tall. The square slots for side sections, and the scenery section sits on top of the end plate, and that makes up the last 50 mil. So 150 mil is about 6 inches, actually 152.4, I think, mil is 6 inches, which is the height of the module, remember. But the clamping zone's in the bottom, so the bottom 4 inches is where it needs the strength and not the top 2 inches. Although it needs to all line up so that you don't smash the scenery or smash it to bits when you actually clamp it. And in this design, I've used 100% 3D printed material, so it's all filament, which meant the ends had to be 50% infill to give them their strength, which is, remember, the bit of how much material's on the inside, and then the rest of it didn't need to be as much. So the sides are modular. You could stick more sides into there, the sides being the bits at the bottom at the top, and it can get bigger. Let's have a look at this in a bit more detail though. So we'll go around from top to bottom. So in the middle of each side, there is a slot there for the cross member. That's just to give this strength, because otherwise, if you dropped it on a corner there, it's probably going to collapse. So the cross member is important just to give it a little bit more strength. But the cross member weighs about 50 grams because it's hardly any infill in it. The clamping zone is marked out by those two holes that stick out. They're actually for bolts that go through and bolt this into the box for transport, so that if the bag is thrown upside down by the baggage handlers, it's not going to smash all the scenery. The thing is going to be stuck within the box, and the box is what protects the module all the way around. And then the ends, the ends as opposed to the sides, the module end is got that 50% infill in it because it's going to get clamped. We moved on to something else with after doing this proof of concept, and we'll talk about that. But for this was 100% 3D printed. So then the scenery sub base. So this is where you start getting into doing CAD and training yourself to do some serious CAD work, there's a lot more angles in a piece of scenery to make it look less man-made than there is in a frame which is very rectangular or square. So I use the CAD program to create the sub base for the scenery. You can do this for your modules, but it's always going to probably be a one-off design. So it's a lot of work for 1 hour. Well, sorry, all the hours that you put in, you're doing it once for one thing that you're probably not going to repeat. So you need to bear in mind whether that's a worthwhile thing or not. For an exercise in testing whether this was possible, it was okay, but it's not something I would want to keep doing. It does allow you to have some quite complex shapes in your scenery. It means that you don't need a separate fascia as you would with foam, because the fascia is effectively the end of that piece that you can see there. And you can do clever things like adding holes for track feeders, and you can also add supports for the bus wires below the scenery base, which I'll show you on the next picture. So on the next slide here, we can see the underside of that scenery base, and you can see that there's an alignment guide down the side, which is where we give us also some surfaces to glue that to the frame. But also you can see on the right hand side, there's some what like little holes. They are little holes. That's holes to fit the bus wire in, so that I don't have to glue anything underneath. These is already in the scenery. I can just push the wires through the module. And then there's also holes for the feeder wires, because you know where my feeders are going to be. I can put the hole and print the hole into the whole thing. I don't need to go and take a drill bit and start weakening the structure of my 3D print. And on the right there, you can see these modules getting printed, and this is just really a picture to show you the infill. You can see there that the infill is quite open, quite a lot of space in there, and that's what makes these really light. I think there was about 5 or 10% infill on these, but it made them really lightweight, which is exactly what we wanted. All the weight in the module is down at the bottom. So what does this look like when we apply it to the frame? So yes, this is me in my kitchen making these modules. And my wife put up with the 3D printer sitting there in the kitchen for a few months while we were doing some other work in the house. But anyway, here's the frame at the bottom, and here's the scenery section on the top. You can see the cross member isn't in here. These are just dry fitted. I would recommend that you always dry fit parts before you glue them, especially on something that you're going to spend a lot of time with this. At this point here, we were up to about 5 or 6 days of the printer being in continuous use. So I really didn't want to screw up any parts. But as you can see, the next few pictures now, we're going to start seeing how this module all comes together. So here's the module with the other side on. Now, I, I'm not a person that believes in not owning up to your mistakes and making little boo-boos. And Gordy made a big boo-boo with this. I actually shrunk this down, but I shrunk the scenery sections a little bit too much. And so I had to 3D print these filler pieces down the middle, which were 10 mil wide, and glue those in on top of the cross member. Good job I put the cross member in, because I'd made the scenery too small. So bit of a mistake on my part, but such is life. We learn from those, and I now use a piece of software to put all my bits together before I print them, so I can make sure it works. But again, that's why it's important to do a miniature proof of concept of every single module that you want to design. Um, Here's oh sorry, should just go just well, we'll stick on this one. So here you can see the bridges in. So these bridge abutments and the bridge itself were 3D printed using a resin printer rather than a filament printer. They're all been painted and detailed and stuck up onto here. I'm using Woodland Scenics um, track bed uh, for my road bed, sorry. But it's not quite high enough or as high as I wanted it to be, so I actually stuck a little bit of plastic card underneath or styrene underneath just to give it a bit more height. But that's by the by. So your scenery starting to go in. I was roughing out where the road was going to be. See, you've taken away the. You can't even see any of the seams now. Um, bit more scenery, and here you start to put in just styrene for the road and the roadway, and it's all starting to come together into scenery. So dead easy to do. You can glue things down to these modules. It's no different really from using wood. The only difference is it's solid, so you need to drill a hole to put anything into it. And what does it look like underneath? So underneath here, you can see the cross support that went in, and you can see some of the feeder wires coming through the holes in the module. You can see there those bits that stick out all the way down the middle that look like staples if you've had some kind of Frankenstein surgery here. That's actually the supports for the bus wire. The bus wire is not in yet, but that's where the bus wire will go, and then the feeders will just connect into the bus wire. So that's what we've got. You can also see those alignment pieces just there that are just, if I actually get a red laser pointer, that would be cool. So look at this. So here you can see the alignment pieces there that are just helping to make sure this all stays nice and square. And then what we're doing at the top, we'll talk about this in a second. This is the next phase two, but post proof of concept design for an end plate with a bit of plywood in it. And that's what the clamps are looking like. So that you've got to test. This is why it has to be 50 mil infill, because if it wasn't, that clamp would just go straight through the side of your 3D print and just make a right royal mess. So that is why that is deeper info. And then in terms of transporting this, so this module fits inside a really useful box. This is a British company, but the products are available in the United States. I really rate these guys. The, this this range of boxes I've used for a significant amount of time when I'm flying across to the US. Anyone who's picked me up from an airport will know I tend to fly with a grab bag, quite a soft-sided case, because a solid-sided cases are way too heavy. But I'll always have some of these boxes inside. Not only do they protect bottles of whiskey from getting squashed by baggage handlers, but they protect models as well. So that module just sits nicely inside that 18-liter box. They're available in the United States from Staples if you've got a Staples still in your local area. If not, I think you can order them online as well. We just drilled a few holes in the bottom of the box, and bolts go through from the module through the bottom of the box, tighten it up with a little bit of a nut, and it's all good. And how did you test these boxes? Well, they parked a Mini on top of them to prove that these 18-liter boxes will support the weight of a Mini, and that's probably good enough for me. Unless my plane rides over the top of these, I think they should be okay. So there's your box. So whatever module you need to make, you need to think about how you're going to transport it. So what did we learn from the proof of concept? Well, I can tell you for free that custom 3D printing scenery subbases is very time consuming. It took me probably 20 hours of work. Now, if you're quick with CAD, you're probably going to do these really quickly. But not only have you got to think about what you want this to look like and visualize it in your head, you've now got to start drawing it in CAD, and the angles are extremely complex, and it's very quickly to make a mistake that then takes you an hour to undo. So it's not the easiest thing to do in the world to make the sub scenery bases. It's great if you're doing a module that's got a bridge on it, or something else, but I really wouldn't recommend doing 3D printed scenery bases for every single module, especially if it's just something that's flat, that's going to have a couple of turnouts on it, and a warehouse or a grain elevator or something. Better to just go back to the traditional method. It'll be a significant bit quicker, and the weight gain from not using foam, when your foam is 20 mil foam as opposed to the 2-inch foam that's more common. If you use a thinner foam sheet like underlay for floors, then that will save you weight anyway. So modules are definitely needing to be cross braced at least every 300 mil, which is just short of 12 inches. But that can be every 150 mil in the way that I've designed my next set of modules. Your sides can have an infill that's as low as 10%, and you can go as low as 5% on the scenery sections if you go that way, or on cross bases. But if you go anything less than 50% on a 100% 3D printed module end, as soon as you clamp it, you're going to destroy it. So you've got to bear that in mind. And that not only does that add weight, it uses a significant amount of filament. And a 30% scale rapid prototype is an absolute must. Otherwise, you'll make the same mistakes that I did when you try to change something like shrinking your module, and you'll find that you've left a 10 mil gap. It's okay to add more, but if I'd gone the other way and it was too big and wouldn't fit, I would have had to reprint the entire thing again. So just be wary of that. It's for the time that it takes. The 30% rapid prototype took me probably about 4 hours to print. So I just let it run overnight. It was well worth doing it. Um, And the cost of this module can be a little bit more than traditional plywood. So you've really got to want to do this for the weight gain, for the weight saving or the space saving. You've really got to want to do this for a reason. If you could use traditional methods, then you should probably just stick with the traditional methods. Um, Now, the other mistake that I made that you may not even have noticed is that I put the holes for locating the frame sections on the side where the fascia should be, and I should really have put them on the end. So in version 2, the ends where the holes are for the components to slot together will be on the end, so that when two modules are clamped together, it's a smooth side to your module. So what next? What next? What comes after the proof of concept? Of course, comes another idea. And so the thing that I found whilst scrolling on Amazon way too late at night was that from Amazon in the US and the UK and in even probably in Australia, I don't know, maybe it's sandpaper in Australia, but you can buy a pre-lasered 100 mil by 100 mil by 1.5 mil piece of laser ply. Laser ply is really, really good because it's really nice. The glue, there's not much glue in there. It's big pieces of wood. The reason there's not much glue in there is because when you hit glue with a laser, it tends to go on fire. So laser ply is pretty good. It's not expensive. You can buy 20, 30, 40 of these sheets at a time. But what it does to your module is it means that you can go from 50% infill to 20% infill, which is a huge weight saving in your ends, and it's also a huge cost saving as well. So the next set of modules that I've done have a recess in them to accept a 100 mil by 100 mil plywood piece that's just glued in there because it goes across the split in the end. So the end's not printed in one piece. Because it goes across the split, it actually adds strength as well to the overall module. And it means that these things are now lighter. It means that the module's lighter and it's quicker to produce than a fully printed 3D end where you've got to do 50%, because you can't just do 50% infill on where that plywood square is there. You would 50% that entire end, and it's going to weigh quite a lot. There's quite a lot of material that's unnecessarily in there. So modules that I'm currently working on. So I'm working on a module that it was going to be for the Evanston N scale Free-moN meet in Evanston, Wyoming in 2024, but it's now been incorporated into the Dallas module. So this is having to be built right now to go to the national convention in Dallas in August. And this is a 13-inch by 13-inch module that will have a 90-degree crossing on it. Uh, Scary things. These are the kind of modules that cause major train wrecks. The reason that it's 13 inches why 13 inches is so that you can get in there and clamp it and make sure that you can wiggle the modules around. So it's slightly bigger than a 12 by 12. But this is what we've got. So you can see that this frame is made up from 6 components, but 3 of them are the same. So if the colors are the same, it's the same component just turned around. So I only actually had to draw 3 different components to make a square module. This is not, this is for a one-off. It's a 90-degree crossing module. So it's a one-off, but that's the way it goes sometimes. And it's designed to accept a 20 mil foam top, which is what you can see here. There's the 20 mil foam scenery base. Given the size of this, the scenery is probably going to be reasonably flat anyway. It has to be flat at the module ends. So unless there's going to be the world's smallest molehill on here, it's not really going to have much scenery. But with the foam, there is the option there to add a few undulations in it. And then we go back to modular designs and the desire to have a uh, modular frame that is extendable. So as I said earlier, I was doing a 12 by 18-inch module and I couldn't find a box big enough. Well, just so happens that I found a box that was 600 mil long and wide enough to fit a 12-inch module in. So it's not quite 24 inches long on the inside, but it's certainly big enough to fit a 12 by 18. It may even fit a 12 by 23-inch module or 12 by 22. And remember, no one cares how much module you've got between the end plates. We only care that the end plates meet the standard. So this is what I have designed. It'll be a modular frame that fits 20 mil foam as the top. 20 mil foam is not the stuff you'll be used to. You'll be used to 2-inch foam, no doubt, for modeling. But 20 mil foam is more available worldwide because it's actually used for installing above underfloor heating systems. So it's quite a lot more common in other parts of the world than North America, and you may even be able to find it in Florida, maybe, because it's not designed to go in the wall. It's designed to go on the floor and to go above underfloor heating systems. So the sides of these modules are 150 mil high, which is just a smidgy short of 6 inches high, but it won't matter when the modules are clamped together. The width of the module is 12 inches. The minimum length, which would be one blue piece in the middle up against the end pieces, which are the light blue and the green piece that you can see there, is just just a smidge under 8 inches, but it's effectively extendable to any length of rectangular module that you want, just by adding more of the side pieces. So we'll have a look at the side pieces in a bit more detail. So here's our side pieces. I call them male to male. Okay, so the gay marriage module is in the middle here. So this is the two males together, and then we have male to female modules either side, Exhibit A and Exhibit B. So the red one and the yellow one. So there's three different designs, and all you need to do is make sure that somewhere in your side you have two males, so a blue section, and then you can have as many reds or as many yellows either side of that, depending how big you want this to be. So if you just wanted an 8-inch long module, maybe for signaling, a lot of people like to have signal modules into large Free-moN setups, then you would just include one of the blue ones. And if you wanted to have something that was longer, you would just add as many of these as you want. And because the slots are there for the cross members, you can have a cross member every 150 mil, which would be the centers here, or you can have a cross member at less of a frequency than every single piece. You don't need them on every single piece. You'll be 3D printing for the rest of your lives if you did. You don't, because the whole thing, when it comes together and you drop the foam in the top, gets very rigid very quickly. But the cross members do allow you to add even more strength, which is much more important for me when I'm flying with my modules. The ends are in two halves. We have end male and end female, and they slot together. And here you can see on this, I'm wanging around here without putting my laser pointer on. So here you can see there is the recess there for the plywood. Basically what happens is these two pieces come together, and then you glue the plywood on as well, and it creates something that is really, really strong. um, Definitely strong enough to be clamped together. The next iteration of this is probably going to be adding a version of the ends with leg pockets, and I'm probably going to be adding leg pockets to the blue sections as well, or to some of the side sections, so that you can have leg pockets. There's no end to it. So if we just go back a little bit, if we go back to the sides here, there's no end to what we can do with these sides. And currently on Thingiverse, I've added just the basics, but I will be doing a side that has a leg pocket, so you can 3D print legs wherever you want them to be, for the conduit leg system that's most commonly used, and also for throttles, for throttle plugins, and we'll also be adding them for turnout control as well. So there's lots of things you can do. It's quite easy to modify these by just putting the correct diameter hole through to add whatever component you want to into the 3D printed frame. Okay, moving on. So this is what it starts to look like. This is the componentized view. You start to plug all these components together, you start to get the idea that your module starts to grow, and you start to see these a bit bigger. This is the last time you're going to see this piece of software, so I'll tell you what this is that you're looking at. This is not a CAD program. This is a freely available product if you are a Windows user. This is called Windows 3D Builder, and it allows you to plug together multiple STL files or other types of 3D printed 3D output files from CAD, and test them basically, and make sure everything fits together. So that's what this is in that you're hearing visualizing here, rather than me doing a 30% prototype. So some free resources. We're model railroaders and we like things that are free, don't we? So you can find the designs for my modules, either just the 4-inch high frame, so you can glue your own 2-inch foam to it, which is Free-moN module frame, and then there's a Free-moN module frame version 2, which is the modules that I've just shown you, where you have the 20mm foam and you've got the 6-inch sides. These files are all there. You can download them and have a go yourself. You don't need to have any CAD work here. All you'll need to do is be able to use the slicing software that came with your printer. And so if you just go to Thingiverse and search for Gordy MMR, you will find my designs. The link is there at the off the bottom of the screen here. You can see the link is there on the bottom of that slide, but we can make these available later. So the CAD software, so tools, CAD software is really expensive. AutoCAD is expensive. The full version of Fusion 360 is expensive, but there is a hobbyist version, which allows you to have up to 10 modules that you are editing and that are stored in the cloud. But you can decide when something is being edited or whether it's read only, and you can flip that in and out. So really, as a hobbyist, it's great for personal use. You've got to be careful, you can't use this for commercial purposes. So this is just for personal use, which is why my files are up on Thingiverse, just to be conformant with all of that. But you can use them. It's a really simple piece of software. If you've used something like Tinkercad, it's not too difficult to move on from this. There are other things as well, like Blender, but I personally find Blender a little bit too complicated for me. It's just trying to do everything. This is a little bit simpler. One of the really nice features of Fusion 360 is that it has a sketch mode, sorry, where you can go into 2D, sketch what you want to do, and then go close the sketch and go back into a 3D format to start pulling things and making things three-dimensional. So it's quite easy to use. It's not so free, but tools that are important is a 3D printer. One of the best starter 3D printers that's out there is the Creality Ender 3. I use an Ender 3 Pro, which costs between $100 and $150. You can usually grab a good deal, especially around Black Friday and Cyber Monday, which is what I did. I think mine cost me the equivalent of about $120. You can modify these. There's lots of files. There's lots of YouTube videos. These are a real entry level 3D printer for filament. Not too difficult to get into, and it will give you some fantastic results, as you've seen with the module. So everything that I've done has been done on an Ender 3, but there are many other entry level filament printers. It's not too expensive to get into. The other thing you're going to need is slicing software. This will always come from your with your 3D printer. This is the Creality slicing software. It comes free with the Ender 3 printer. There's too many threes in all of this for me, but anyway, it comes free of charge. It's a really good thing to learn how to use. You can't draw in the slicing software, but what you do in slicing software is this is where you determine the amount of infill that you're going to have. This is where you determine the way that you're going to print it. So as you can see here, that the picture that you're looking at there, that's an end for version 2 Free-moN end. It's actually the Free-moN module end for the 13-inch by 13-inch module, which is currently printing behind me on the printer. And you can see that we've been able to manipulate how we want that to print. So it's printing flat on the print bed, which gets us a better print. We've also got some other settings up there on the right around the infill, which is just where I moved my cursor here. And just a bit that you can see just here, that's the amount of infill. We've got some other settings up here. So it's pretty simple. You hit slice, it works out what it wants the printer to do, and then you save that to your SD card, stick it in the printer, and away you go. So that comes free. So the only thing here that you're going to need to purchase is a printer and the filament, and you may already have these available to you. If you're part of or you've got a local makerspace, you can also go there. But again, this is not a clinic on 3D printing. Apologies if you thought it was, it is not. But there are other clinics available on the NMRA YouTube channel from previous NMRAxes where you can go and look at how to 3D print. And speed, that is it. Because in my defense, this has all happened because I was left unsupervised.
Do you know if there's a T-track version of this concept?
That's a really good question. I have the designs for a T-track version of this concept. Yes, but I haven't actually put it into fruition yet because with T-Track, yeah, I may well do it, but I have got a design in Tinkercad for a Free-moN module. Yes, the only thing with sorry, not Free-moN, T-Track. The only thing with T-Track is you can just knock a T-Track module up with foam board, which is a lot lighter. You know, the T-Track isn't getting clamped, so you can use even lighter materials than 3D printing. But yes, in theory, you can do it.
Is that laser ply lighter weight than the 3D printed parts?
Uh, it's
The question is, could you have used more of that instead of 3D printing?
no, I couldn't have used more of that
Okay.
because it's not going to be strong enough to. It would be it would be extremely expensive. You could have used 1.5 mil laser ply and applied it to with some foam in the background, but the likelihood is as soon as you clamped it, the foam would start to shrink.
Okay.
So
Okay.
you could do that, but no, I wouldn't recommend that you did that.
Okay. The other questions are a little bit about traveling. Have you air traveled with these modules in hot weather regions? Um, because people are concerned that your modules might be sitting outside the airplane in something hot. Do you have any concern about the 3D printed part of the module?
So I guess the concern is it melting. We'll find out. But that's why if you I've flown from Texas with chocolate for my children, which is much more susceptible to melting than a Free-moN module will be. Um, and as long as they're not left out in direct sunlight, they should be okay. And you've got clothes and other things in your checked bag, it should be absolutely fine. But clearly, if they're left outside for umpteen hours in 120 degrees heat or somewhere in India, they're gonna melt. There's not a lot you can do about plastic is gonna melt. But I don't. I'm not worried about that. If you were really really concerned about these being outside in hot weather a lot in direct sunlight, you might want to, instead of using PLA, you might want to use ABS, which is a different
Mhm.
type of filament, but that won't be as well affected by the heat. It should be more resistant to it because ABS is used in parts that go into your car engine or under your bonnet under the hood. Sorry, under the hood of your car, and so if ABS is what's used to make fans, etc., on radiators. So they should be less susceptible to heat using that material. Great speed.
I, I just had an idea. This module of yours is mostly hollow underneath, right?
Yeah,
So could you fill that up with chocolate?
I can do that if you want. I
Or is
can,
that
I
or
can,
is, or is that where you're
I
going to
can.
put your socks and your underwear?
I was gonna make them big enough to put a bottle of scotch under, but I can do chocolate if you wish. Yeah, no problem at all.
um, have you determined how you will protect your scenery that's on the top side when this goes through baggage control?
Yeah, so it's inside the really useful box, and it's bolted to the really useful box. And no matter where you hit that box, it's fine. So the scenery isn't touching the top of the box, and because it's bolted, it's not going to fall. So as
Okay.
long as it's glued down, I suspect I'll find a little bit of ballast in the bottom of a box, but that's the standard for any module that you move. You're going to lose a few bits of scenery off it.
Cool. Could you do a hybrid where you do traditional um, Primo N ends and 3D print the rest?
Oh, I absolutely think you could. Um, I haven't because of the weight. I mean, 30 ounces is a considerable amount of weight to have in your checked luggage.
Hmm.
So if I can take that from 30 ounces down to about 7 ounces, then that's what I'm going to do. But yeah, absolutely, you could. You would just need to think about how you make that secure.
So when your modules show up here, are they ready to be installed and run trains across them, or do you still have to do some touch up or
No, so
some work?
when they arrive in Dallas, if they're in one piece, they should just be able to be clamped straight into the setup and plugged in. Done.
So you don't have any loose buildings or structures that needs to go on top.
No, because the modules that I've designed for Dallas don't have buildings on, but one will have a one. No, one of them will have. It'll have a station, but it'll be glued to the module, so it
Okay.
shouldn't need any work whatsoever. They should just arrive and be bolted. The only issue with this is my modules that I'm bringing are quite small. So I think the longest one we're going to do is 2 feet, which can be clamped with no leg support.
Hmm.
But if you're bringing a 4 foot long module to a Free-moN meet, you're probably going to need legs, which is why I'm going to be adding leg pockets to my designs for longer modules. But currently, the legs that people use are metal conduit pipes, so you're losing the whole weight saving there. But generally, a big meet, there'll be some spare bits that you can use,
Okay.
so you should be fine.
And you don't need to do anything special keeping the wires in underneath because they just hang loose, either bypassing a module or attaching to your drops.
Yeah, so like you've seen on the design there, the design's got holes for the bus wires to be supported, so they are attached to the module, and then you've just got tails that hang loose at each end where it plugs to the next module.
Okay.
So the wiring's all solid. When I do the foam topped modules, I will have to glue something to the underside of the foam to attach the wire to. But what I may well do is run the bus wire along the frame and then go from the frame up from the side up to the foam, which will probably be the way that I'll do it. But you need to be supporting your wiring. If you just have all the wiring hanging loose, it'll just get pulled off.
Okay. I didn't see any place I could plug a throttle into.
Like I say, there isn't on my modules, but when it's only 12 inches and 24 inches long, that you're not going to need to plug a throttle into that part of the module. Not every Free-moN module section has to have a throttle pocket.
Okay.
Or throttle port. But what you can do is you can clamp a throttle port to the side of any module, and that's how you can attach them. So they don't have to be through the fascia; they can be clamped underneath.
Okay. Someone asked, would it be possible to replace the infill with pyramids, or not strong enough, or too complicated to print or model?
Well, your infield patterns are different styles anyway, so you need to make sure that your infill pattern is on something like 3D cubic or octet, so that you've got that kind of you've got triangles in the design or diamonds in the design. There is a infill pattern that's just grids, that's just lines, and
Mhm.
that's probably not going to be strong enough. So you have different patterns of infill. If you Google that, Google 3D printing infill, you'll find all the different designs that you could possibly have.
Correct. Cool. I think that's the only questions I see here. So thank you very, very much. And um, be honest to say, can't wait to see them.
All right.
Right.
Thanks. Hey,
We're live.
Speed. Isn't there somewhere else that people can go to
Yes,
ask
there
more
is.
questions?
There is, but Brad forgot to tell me to tell you.
Oh,
So
okay. So
Gordy is
that'll be
willing.
the breakout rooms at
Yes.
whereby.com/OMRG, so Oscar Mike Romeo Golf, and that's where the breakout rooms are. So I'll head over there right now, and if anyone wants to ask me more questions or wants to see the modules in the flesh through the camera, you can do it there.
Cool. Hi there, welcome back. I'm Speed at the bottom of the helix. A wonderful new modular method of model trains called mini diorama was discovered during a trip to Japan. We're trying to spread this method around the world because it's a great way to reach out to new modelers. This will give them a method to test the waters and get an introduction to this wonderful hobby. Experienced modelers, on the other hand, can use this new platform to try new concepts all before making a large commitment. Here to talk about this discovery is Stephen Moore.
Hello. I have a small riddle for you first before we get started. Does a straw have one hole or two? Think about that. Anyway, hi, I am Stephen Moore. I had a life goal of attending two major events in Japan: the T-Track contest held by Kato and the Japanese Association of Model Railroaders JAM convention. The JAM convention, I was told 30,000 attendance was a slow weekend. Before COVID, they were getting numbers of like 150,000. That's pretty dang incredible. I'll explain more about these shortly, but during August of 2022, thanks to the help of many friends and people at Kato headquarters, I was able to go to Tokyo to fulfill both wishes in one weekend. I was also able to hang out with some of my wonderful friends over there. They might be listening. Hey guys, it's good to hear from you. The T-Track contest, one of the largest, if not the largest collection in the world that gathers and connects T-Track modules, reviews them all, and awards placement of the best modules of the year. This occurs every year in cooperation with young people, mostly high school age, that enter the contest, and it is a fantastic way to reach out and get young people involved in model trains. This last year held over 1,500 modules. It was fantastic. What I did not expect to see was something called Mini Diorama Circus. The Mini Diorama Circus was a contest for modelers between the ages of 5 and 14, which Kato drives and coordinates and gets credit for these young people with the STEAM program. You might also know it as the STEM program in America. They added an A, I think we did as well, and it's called the STEAM program. Mini diorama, mini diorama modules are small oval modules approximately 4 inches by 6 inches with either a 5-piece of straight 124 millimeter Kato section of track or a curved R183-45 piece of Kato track. These modules do not have much real estate for scenery, yet there were countless modules of fantastic quality on display among the 500 entries in the contest. I was asked to speak at the contest and spoke mainly about the USA T-Track and its great future. While waiting to speak, they had on the big video screen a few young people at the Kato USA headquarters in Chicago, and they had built some of these mini diorama modules and displayed them proudly. I was so enamored with the simple concept that I spent 2 hours photographing every entry. I purchased several of the kits and brought them home. When I returned, I thought deeply about it. I thought about it for a very long time. And I started to get excited about the potential this has in the USA. I showed the kits and numerous photos of the modules in the contest to members of the North Texas T-Track Club that I'm a member of here locally. While these modules were not T-Track modules, the club thought this was a great way to promote model railroading in general and decided to conduct a contest of their own. The first hurdle was to overcome the price of the available module kits in Japan. In Japan, the price is only $10, but in the USA, the price was $30 each to get them imported. Everyone felt that price point was too high. Until we have the better price point of the wonderful Kato kits, a lively discussion raised the idea of just having 1-inch foam, and then I quickly provided that compatible I'm sorry, something fell behind me. That quickly provided compatible modules that could be easily made using foam at 1/10 of the kit price. What you see right now is one of the first modules our club built. This was built by Evan, and we thought it was pretty fantastic. We still use Kato Track, of course, because I am a loyalist of Kato, and our price is $3 per module. So this made it much more attractive to young people and their parents. Our first contest was held at the train show that we have here locally twice a year at something called the Council of Model Railroad Clubs, and its website is dfwtrainshows.com. There are a few pictures of my club members and their T-Track modules. And we will get to that in a second. So this was so I was talking about the price point. This made it a lot more attractive to get young people involved and their parents' wallets. With the price barrier broken, the club decided to hold its first contest, as I mentioned, and award prizes in 2 classes of competitors, a youth category for 12 and under, and an open class for any age modeler. To promote T-Track, the club members opted to award undecorated T-Track modules as prizes. I also added myself some souvenirs from Japan that I had brought back to give to every child that entered. And we also gave away an actual model train. It was a small engine with a couple of little cars. Advertising was informal and conducted at one exhibit a month ahead of the contest via social media. I had made and sold 100 modules at cost during the 6 weeks prior to the contest. The contest went well with 8 modules in the youth category and 20 in the open category. The club was pleased with the outcome and is committed to holding the contest again at both of the local shows in 2023 and 2024. I related the experience of my trip and the North Texas T-Track contest at a local NMRA division meeting. The simplicity of the modules coupled with their low cost were well received, and an offer to share the mini diorama concept at the 2023 National NMRA Convention was extended and quickly accepted. This event will consist of contest registrants receiving a mini diorama module at the convention and adding scenery during the first 4 days of the convention. A popular vote will be held on the 5th day for the attendees' favorite mini diorama module. Besides the obvious fun aspect of holding a contest with a make and take souvenir, a secondary goal is to expose more modelers from around the world with the mini diorama concept, so that they may share this concept with beginner modelers of any age. On the sign up for the NMRA convention, that's where you're going to want to find right there is it's a small clinic fee of $7. You will be provided The module, you can do more than one. You can, and we will also be providing basic supplies and materials like ground cover and paint, maybe some trees, maybe some small buildings. We haven't gathered all of that together yet, but I'm working on making all the modules now, all 200 of them. There is the other page that you're going to want to see discussing and talking about the mini diorama workshop at the and contest at the NMRA convention. It's going to be a lot of fun. You're going to get some bragging rights and you're going to get some prizes. And you get to take home a little mini diorama. The build hours are Monday from noon to 7, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. And we will hold the contest Friday. You will need to have your module turned in by 7 p.m. to turn it on Thursday. And then we will have open voting on Friday from noon to 5. And then as soon as we're able to tabulate the votes, we will announce the winner right then. And then please be sure to pick up your modules that day and make sure to take them with you because you don't want to leave them left behind. Otherwise, I get to inherit them. This was a picture of the first award-winning module in our contest. The module is on the left, and our wonderful little winner is on the right. And the dad later wound up joining, and he's joining the NMRA. So we got a member out of all of this little tiny contest, and it's growing rapidly. The future of model railroading and reaching out to young people to get them involved for the past 20 years is something I have always heard the same thing over and over. How do we get young people involved and into the model railroading? I think this mini diorama concept is a great way to go. Kato did it right in determining what the target audience was, coordinating with the STEAM program, and holding a contest that you can put anything you want on these modules, including the toys off the top of your birthday cake. Yes, that happened. Right there. The guy had a bowling birthday and he took the toys off the top of his cake and put them on a module, and it turned out great. There's no intense feeling or getting scared on what the limits are or what your standard should be, or should there be what all there are these standards and wiring. There's nothing to it. It's a simple little piece of foam with a track on it, and you can put anything you want on it. I feel like this reaches out to the youth and anyone not currently in the hobby, like beginners, because they see this huge layouts at these shows and they're like, how do I get started? Well, this is a great way to get started. It helps them focus on the concept and helps them focus and gets them started on a very small commitment level. I also feel makes a great testing ground for even the most experienced modelers. It gives them a testing area to try new concepts, to put in ground cover, like trying static grass or something simple like that. And as I mentioned, you can put anything you want on these, including the 3 movies of Star Wars and a tribute to someone that may have passed, which is what the little photography is right there. A person we knew who did a lot of photography. Somebody made a tribute module. Somebody made in Japan a little Mount Fuji module set, and I thought that was pretty cool. And even this little tin can on the lower left, that's a can of water that they took and they mounted onto the module. And then the other one they printed out something from a video game like Mario Brothers. If you want to follow me and find out more information about my mini diorama push, I've got a Facebook group started, and I try to keep it simple. I try to just post about upcoming contests. I try to post about winners like we had. I try to keep it simple. I am not looking to expand it to other modules. There are the two basic modules, a curve and a straight. I'm looking to keep it simple so that we don't scare off people with complicated concepts and over doing it. We're trying to get young modelers in and new modelers into the hobby with this concept. You can find me on Facebook by just typing in mini diorama model railroading, or I've got this link. And what you see below is a image of my main page. Getting a little more in depth, these are your two basic kits that you get from Kato. They're basic wood kits that you assemble and then you screw the track down from underneath. The two kit numbers are 28889 and 28888. That's what you get in both kits. I believe it's a laser cut, and you punch it out and you punch out all the little holes and spaces, and it's pretty simple assembly. And as I discussed, you can get these in America for $30 from any basic Walther's distributor hobby shop. This was my process on creating the 1-inch foam kits. I start with basic 1-inch foam. And I go to Home Depot or in a home improvement store. It could be pink from Home Depot, it could be blue from Lowe's, and I take my new desktop wire cutter that you see on the lower left. I invested a little bit into that, and it has a nice guide that lets me take those 2-foot by 2-foot foam squares, easy to take home, and I cut those down into what I call blanks, into 4-inch by 6-inch blanks by putting my guide up against and I just run that foam through and create my, my 6-inch wide strips. And then I'll adjust the guide to 4 inches, and then I'll take those strips and make 4 inches out of them. And you can see my blanks on the lower right corner. Those are simple 4 by 6-inch blanks. After that, I will use the Kato kits as a guide. I will take T-pins and T-pin them down to the 4 by 6-inch foam. And then I have a little foot pedal that turns my wire cutter on, and then I'll just go around the edge of that, and it comes out to those little, what you see there, those little foam round looking things. One's curve and one's straight. Once I have those cut, I will take it to a belt sander and smooth out the edges from any little jerks or movements I might have had during the cutting. And so I will smooth those out with the belt sander and finish out the edges. And then I use regular Gorilla Glue to glue the track down. But if you use regular Gorilla Glue, you've got to hold them down with clamps like you see on the right side. Because Gorilla Glue is like an expanding foam glue. You cannot use super glue, it will melt the foam. But if you use the wood kits from Kato, I use wood glue or super glue on those. But foam, you cannot use super glue. I use Gorilla Glue. You could also use wood glue on the foam kits. And that's just simply to glue the track down. Now, for those advanced people that love 3D printing, there are some 3D printed modules available for download. You can link to those off of my Facebook page. We post them out, the link to those occasionally on that Facebook page. Our head of our T-Track club, Vic McT, created these. And so we put our little stamp on the bottom of those, and I thought that was pretty funny. Our little T-Track, North Texas T-Track stamp. And he also included a couple of spots for wire drops if you want to drop wire. And he's got both straight and curve. This is a picture of Vic and I holding our first contest. Like I mentioned, the 20 adult modules and the 5 kid modules. And then I wanted to cover briefly where this started. This started in Japan with this simple kit. This was a little bit more pricey than 10 bucks. I think this was about 25 or $30. But what was interesting about this kit was that it gave you all these wood layers that you had to glue layer on layer on layer. But it also made it where you could make this little river, and it came with everything you needed to build what's shown in the picture, and including ground cover, the tree, the post, everything you needed was in this kit. I would like to go live now to show some live stuff, if I can. Can y'all see me? I hope. There we are. After it's all said and done, this is what we wind up with: a curve and a straight foam piece. Get a good lighting on this so it's not reflecting on you. Now they developed these, Kato developed these concepts with the curves so that they are able to snap together in either direction. In fact, on the curves, they will sometimes do a snake, because in your contest you might have multiple curves, and so they might build a snake, and then what they will do is take a regular piece of track and just hover it between 2 modules, like you see right between here, to cover any gaps or go back together to make the complete loop. What we also do is we will take one of those small pieces of Kato track that has a drop under it and put it between the 2 modules to come off the power feed into a simple Kato transformer to run power to run the trains at the contest. In case you're wondering, what are the Kato part numbers for those pieces of track? The straight pieces are 20-020, and the curve pieces are 20-172. As I mentioned, the Kato really dived into the STEAM program, and they in fact created their own program, And this is available in English from any vendor. They can order them from Walthers. They're only like $1. And I bought a bunch of them to hand out to try to get involved into the STEAM program. And it's a wonderful guide on constructing model railroading in general, not just mini dioramas. So this is a pretty good guide to get kids involved in model railroading and get credit with STEAM. And like I said, it's English version. One of the prizes that we like to give away is something called, what do they call, Pocket Line Series from Kato. I'm going to be giving this away at our next contest. They're pretty inexpensive. They're like 25 bucks, and it's a full train. And you saw in the picture of our young modeler, he got one of these as a prize along with blank T-Track modules. Something else Kato did was with that initial all-inclusive kit, they also made a pretty interesting book. It's only available in Japanese that I picked up while I was there. You could probably order it, but it talks about the different ways to construct the mini. This is like the mini diorama construction and what you can do and how to paint it, how to put it together in more depth. And it tells a little story on that original concept of this boy and his dog and how they were putting up a railroad crossing. I had to use Google Translate to read it, but it was a pretty good little book that I picked up. Every year, as I mentioned, Kato holds a T-Track contest in Japan. This is the flyer they put out. And when I went in August, I actually took a module over and entered it in the contest. And it was pretty fun. I heard Free-moN talking about traveling with modules. And what I came down to was to protect the top layer of it. What I did was I put it in a carry-on suitcase, but I took all the pieces that go on the module and I put them in little boxes and I assembled the whole thing while I was in my hotel room, like the night before I was supposed to enter the module. It was just a simple assembly of putting the buildings in place and dropping them in. And then I found this little wonderful pamphlet while I was there about mini diorama as well. It's all in Japanese. And it was about the mini diorama circus entry. And what's pretty neat is in their pamphlet, they have Hiroshi Kato building one himself, a picture of him. And I love his little display in the back, what he likes to display his trains on. I thought that was pretty neat. I am out of content, so I'm a little early. I thought I would run long, but I'm a little early. I apologize. I should have tried to gather more content, but I am out.
Don't you have more photos to show us?
I don't have them prepared, but I do post them a lot on Facebook. I try to post them weekly, if not daily, of all the 500 entries from the mini diorama contest in Japan.
Okay, so here's a few questions. If someone wants to run a similar contest in your local area, do you have the contest specs and the requirements posted somewhere? all the
We're
rules
pretty
and
new to
regulations?
we're pretty new to this. We made up our own rules in contest entry when we did it in our with we it was affiliated with our club, and all we did was we posted on what time you should have it entered by. We had club members vote on it the first time around, whereas we learned a lesson to have maybe public vote on it, and hours of voting, which is what we're doing at the NMRA convention. We will have uh, posted what we're giving away and clear on age limits, like our age limits were, uh, any 12 and under, and anybody older was the overall category. Um, Other contest things we learned, um, get the word out ahead of time, but not too early because somebody might forget, and keep them on a in contact with to try to make sure they remember when the contest is. Something else we did was we handed out, they're only $3 for us to make these modules. We handed those out to people a lot where we just flipped the bill, we paid for it, to get people interested and involved. We have people in Colorado that have taken our concept and have started a contest there. We have some people in Oklahoma. I'm in Texas. We have some people in Oklahoma that have started the concept, and some people in Florida. And of course, I mentioned the people in Chicago with the Cato headquarters there. Um, I do know I did inquire with Hiroshi if we could hold a mini diorama circus at our national convention. I did not hear back, at least not yet, and it's probably too late to get that going. So that's why we took it on ourselves as NMRA to hold our own contest. That's why we, as our club, took on to hold our own mini contests. Um, but this mini diorama circus is pretty big, as I mentioned, 500 entries in Japan, and the 1,500 entries in T-Track, and be sure you keep those separate. The contest was a separate event from Jam, which has the 30 to 150,000 people entry. Those were two different events in the same weekend. But if you want to ask me on my Facebook page about what more we learned about the contest, I'm happy to help you out. I'll even send you my phone number and we can talk and chat about it. But yeah, we're still learning on how to hold these contests and what to do.
So is there a website or a place for the Cato mini diorama program in Japan, or is there a global mini diorama movement?
I don't think it's very global, but I'm glad you mentioned that because just last week I saw that Kato has branched out beyond Japan and they're holding a mini diorama circus in the United Kingdom coming up, I think, in a week or two, in 2 weeks. And I saw the posting about it and I was pretty excited to see that, and that they're branching out and holding this mini diorama circus in multiple countries. But I thought it's very hard to get the kits over here. They're always out of those wooden kits. That's why we went forward with creating, at least for now, these temporary foam kits. And until we're able to get those nice wooden kits over here and an affordable price, then we'll probably continue with the foam kits. But anybody could use the wood kits if they like. They're interchangeable. But mini diorama circus is, I think, growing, and I believe that I want to push it because I kept hearing for the past 20 years, as I mentioned, that how do we reach out to the young people? How do we get young people involved in the model railroading? And that's why I'm pushing it, because I've heard that for 20 years. People, how do we get young people? How do we get new people involved? This is a great way to take this little $3 investment. Go home, paint it, put anything you want on it, the stuff off the top of your birthday cake, the stuff that you get at the toy store, anything you want, and explore. And for those, I know there's probably a few experienced model railroaders out there that haven't tried static grass. Well, guess what? You don't have to try static grass on your whole layout. You could try it out on this, and it's not gone to waste. You could take that, make it nice, and enter it in our contest, and maybe win a train and a module so that you get to do more.
Hey, quick questions about the modules themselves. Do we need to paint the sides of them?
I like to paint the sides of mine black. Some people like to do it brown, but you don't have to.
Okay.
But think about if you're entering in a contest and it's sitting there on the table and you've got a nice top and you've got a bright pink foam on the side and both are right next to each other and one's nicely painted on the side and the other's pink foam on the side, which one are you going to vote for?
The blue one.
The blue one.
Okay, so at the end of this contest, do you plug all these together?
Yes, that's
And-
the point. And that's why we have on our NMRA convention. I'm sorry, I interrupted you, Speed.
No, continue.
I got
You got it.
excited for a second. Yes, they are plugged together. They're a modular concept. They are a module. So that's why I was mentioning, if you have 20 straights and no curves, what you can do is you have extra curves that are all pink, or extra pieces of track, just Kato track, that you can just plug between the two modules, and you can build a little oval, or you can build a little snaky modules. I've seen that a lot where they go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and then they go around on the backside, back and forth, and they could be all curves. There was said in Japan a little table of all curves. There was no straights at all. It was pretty fantastic. I have
So-
something else I'm going to share. While I was in Japan, I picked up little toys. We're trying to get the youth involved. We're trying to get young people into this. So even if they didn't win the contest, I personally invest in some little toys that I hand out. I found these little pins. These are a pin. It's a little bullet Shinkansen, because I'm huge into Japanese trains, if you couldn't tell with my little Japanese shirt. These little Japanese bullet train pins that I'm able to hand out. I actually bought these. I bought about 50 of them for the NMRA convention in 2020 that got canceled because I was going up there to give a Japanese trains clinic. By the way, Japanese train clinic, sign up for it. It's Monday night at 7, 8 a.m. on Wednesday at the NMRA convention. You might get something fun, but I hand these out to the little kids. They love them. They light up. Let me show you one that lights up. I've got one open here. There's
Wow.
red, blue, and green, and it's a pen too, so it's functional too. And it's a little toy, a pen, and it's pretty cool.
Okay, so if you assemble all these modules together, are you going to run a train on it?
Absolutely. And
are
guess what? There'd be trains like this.
And how do you power it?
You power it Kato transformer goes to the little blue and white wire, to the little clippy that goes underneath the track. I bought one of these little kits, and inside of it is the blue and white wire that clips into the back of the Kato transformer, and it comes with a piece of little track, a little piece of track that blue wire plugs into the bottom of it, And I put that piece of track between two of these modules. And the wire drops right down between the two and over to the transformer. And that's how simple it is to run it.
So you will be providing some of that for our contest in
Yes.
August.
Yes. I've already got it packed and ready to go.
And then someone asked about the number of the book. I assume that's the ISBN number, or where do I buy one?
It might be the Kato number. It's a good question. It's a great question.
There's a barcode on the back.
25-915-1 is the Kato part number. You can't see that. Mm-hmm. I'll read it again.
It's also ISBN number there.
Yeah, for ISB 4949727678276276. Kato part number again, 25-915-1.
And I think someone mentioned that you can download the ebook from the Kindle store for $2.99.
Yes, you can. I have mine downloaded on my phone. But this is the key. If we can get into this and get credit for these kids, this is why it exploded in Japan. This is why they had 500 entries after COVID. Actually, it was still during COVID. I had to get special permission and a lot of health screenings to get in. 500 entries still during COVID. Young people, STEAM program. Got to get into that. That's what I'm trying to do next. I have a display. This is my most recent module. You might have seen it on Facebook. It is a mini module, a straight from Harry Potter. I have a little statue of each house represented. All of the imprints are from the movie, including the floor of the Ministry of Magic, and the hat speaks. How did you know I was Ravenclaw? That's my most recent module. I'm pretty proud of it. I'm also proud of my previous two modules. And by the way, they're easy to transport. Can go all over the globe with it, no problem. I have a 2-module set. As I said, I'm big into Japanese. I have a 2-module set. Look how easy this is to clip together if I can't stop shaking because I'm still nervous. My little Godzilla module set. And I have little souvenirs from my Japanese trip on here. These little trains, they were chopsticks that I cut off and put on here as a train. The imprint is actual photos I took while I was in Japan that I put like across the big, huge crosswalk in Shibuya Crossing.
Cool.
That's my little Godzilla module set that I love a lot. One more module. This is a special module. You can only get this kit if you're in Japan at the Kyoto Kato Hobby Shop. However, I talked to some of my friends over here. It's a pretty neat kit. It's all hardwood. It's pretty impressive. It's a little bit longer than normal. It's not standard, but they have made it a little bit larger to have. Are you there? My computer just went blank.
We can hear you. Keep going.
My computer is beeping at me, and I don't know why.
Well, then finish your sentence. We can still hear you.
They're called Plaza Japan. He went to the Kyoto Hobby Shop and bought a few and has made these available online. That's grass And these are little inserts that you glue down onto the thing.
Cool. Okay, would you be willing to go to the breakout room?
Yes, absolutely.
The link is werby.com/OMRG, Oscar Mary Rudolph Golf. And that's Wereby, WHEREBY.com. And I believe Brad posted that a little earlier if you scroll back up. If not, Brad, can you do so again? And then thank you very, very much, Stephen. There's one more question that's not related to your clinic, but I do want to ask it here. I just want to say thank you first. We will take a 3-hour break and then come back with the evenings clinics, 4 of them. And this time we will not have the technical trouble because we are already on the new system. So the question is T-track limited to N scale? Has anyone tried to do it in HO scale, if you know?
It is absolutely not limited to N scale. There are module standards about every scale, including G scale. You can do it in any scale. There is a large group of Z scalers doing T-track. I have not seen any groups formed yet for HO, but in January, our club is a T-track club, not an N-scale T-track club, although N-scale is the prominent one. Our club created some Z-scale modules. They're going to do some Z-scale layouts, but they also created some HO scale modules just to have them, just to see what it's like. So
Cool.
it is any scale, and there is a wiki page for that, and I'm happy to get that for you in the breakout room.
And I will also create a mini diorama channel in the interchange by the other modular layouts. And then you could also post some stuff in there for us. Thank you very much. See you guys this afternoon.